Welcome to the Graybeard Chronicles podcast. Your hosts, Brian Halstead and Kevin Harkins, are two gray-bearded patriots who love God, their family and friends, and their country. The Graybeards are here to inspire, inform, and educate you on a myriad of topics they are passionate about. Brian and Kevin have a strong desire to share this with you to help you live your best life. Sit back and enjoy this amazing podcast as the Graybeards pass along the wisdom of the ages.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Graybeard Chronicles. I'm Brian Halstead.
And I'm Kevin Harkins.
And Kevin, we're here to pass along some wisdom of the ages. What the heck does that mean?
We're not perfect, but we do have gray beards, and that means we've got some significant life experience, some life lessons, and some perspectives that are worthy of passing along.
Well, I think that sums it up nicely. Let's get to it. Kevin, good evening.
Let's get to it.
Every time. You have to call that out every time. I like it. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it.
Yeah. So we changed venues again tonight. We were supposed to be in a different location, our standard basement location. But as folks can see, we're in a different location tonight.
And thanks for your willingness to pivot on a moment's notice
no problem
to do it here tonight.
Yeah, couldn't pass this opportunity up. That's for sure.
Dean Bryant has a home studio, which is very nice, and it's basically the same thing, but it's much more intimate. And he can smoke his pipe in there, which is most important. I can smoke one too, but he does a lot more than I do. He's good. He's gone all in with the pipes. He got introduced to pipes about 6-7 months ago.
Yeah.
And now he has 50 or so.
The number grows every time Kevin tells the story. My collection doesn't necessarily grow, but the story does.
I haven't smelled smoke pipe since my daddy died. I mean, that would have been a great memory. Yeah, that would have brought back some very pleasant memories. Love the smell of smoke pipe.
Well, next time we'll do that.
Right.
And Dean, if you don't mind, when you're chatting, either speak up or lean in to this
Right.
fine. There you go.
Got it.
Yep. We want to make sure we got you.
Get intimate with the microphone.
Yeah, we actually had, for one of our guests, we ended up, and I didn't say that, and we had an issue.
Well, the other issue was I was trying to turn his volume up, and I had plugged Kevin into a different input that particular evening, and I was turning up the wrong volume. So Kevin just kept getting louder.
Right.
I wasn't solving the problem.
So let me tell you, Bryant and ladies and gentlemen, we have actually an awesome surprise for us and for you. We were planning on doing just our normal Bryant and Kevin show today, and I got a text message from Mr. Dean Lee, retired Vice Admiral Coast Guard Dean Lee, this morning saying, "Hey, Kevin, you want to have a beer tonight?" And I said, "I'd love to have a beer, but we're recording our podcast on Monday night, as we do every Monday night." He says, I'm traveling north on 95, and I'd love to see you. And I said, "Well, why don't you be a guest on our podcast?" We got an annoying fly here. And so when you guys see that, we're good with it. I love flies, I think. Look at it there. Anyway, so Dean, thank you for saying yes on a moment's notice. That was awesome that you did it. I was kind of thinking, what are the chances he's actually going to decide to say yes? And I thought it was better.
Sorry. If you roll out and your tongue flies out and grabs that fly, I'm going to be impressed.
Give me the chopsticks. Give me the chopsticks. You said yes. And so Dean's not, intimately familiar with what we do here. He's becoming that way right now. But Dean is a friend, I guess. First of all, he's a colleague that I highly respect and had the opportunity to do some work with. An ounce of which was when we were both wearing a uniform in the Coast Guard. Mostly it's been for he and I work that we've done together after he retired and I retired from the Coast Guard. Dean had an incredibly decorated and successful Coast Guard career, made it up to the extremely high level of 3-star Admiral, a Vice Admiral in the Coast Guard, and retired as the Coast Guard's Atlantic Area Commander, which means that he was responsible for all Coast Guard operations from as far west as the Rockies. Is that what it is? Something like that? And as far east as, this is in your bio. He's gonna correct me. As far west as the Rockies and as far east as The
Arabian Gulf.
Arabian Gulf. There we go. All right, and everything in between. I knew Dean when he was in the Coast Guard. I first met him. He was in 04. I was in 03. He was a lieutenant commander at the station. I think it was Atlantic City. Pretty sure it was.
Right.
Yep. And I was a controller in the 5th District. Came down to visit you, and you were hanging out with all the people who landed their helicopter at Atlantic City and walked over to the to gamble. There's something about me and my sweet smell in this fly. Anyway, he continued to go on, as did I. But
it's kind of interesting. He's hovering around you.
I know. It is. I don't know if it's my. Well, it is my sweet smell.
I think it's a perfect.
Right. It's an odor. We don't know if it's good or bad, but the fly likes it.
It's gonna get you before the day's out. It is. Anyway, retired and continues to be a keynote speaker in other very significant. This fly is gonna significant events, and he was telling us, in fact, just before we came on the air, about another one that he has done for the Air Force over the period of years, and a new job working with the Marines. We look forward to hearing about that. But anyway, all of that, Dean Lee, thrilled to have you here. And the first question I want to ask you as we get started is, after saying welcome to you, is you also have spent more time than the average American in prison, and we want to hear about that. If you go ahead and start there, that'd be good.
Well, first off, you offer me a free beer, I'll do a podcast.
All right.
So that wasn't real hard. So here, it might be my last podcast, but for several reasons. But correction now. I've spent a lot of time in jail, but not in prison. All right, there's a difference. All right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a valid point.
So, jail is where you end up before you go to prison.
Okay.
Usually after you get convicted, if you have a longer sentence, you're going to be shipped off to a prison. But I deal with every week for the last 5 years, pretty much every week. I go to local jail in my hometown, Chesterfield County, Virginia, third largest county in the state of Virginia. So they got a very modern, heavily populated jail, and it's full of heroin addicts. And so I've been working with heroin addicts. That's an extension of my duty. After retiring, and I have learned more about the human condition working with addicts than I learned in the first 62 years of my life. I could tell you stories, and we ain't got enough time to go into too many of them, but it's been an education for me and very rewarding. Yeah,
and I had some exposure to this. It's been a couple of years ago. Dean invited me to go to the prison and meet him there, and then meet with that particular, I'm going to call it a cohort of in this case men. No, I guess it was men and women. We saw both that were in jail. All of them being heroin addicts, and I got a chance to spend the day with you there. That is a remarkable, I'm going to call it a ministry that you are conducting, and I know that you are changing lives, because imagine that you are in jail. Imagine that you're on the down and outs of your life. Imagine that you've taken some wrong turns and made some bad decisions, probably one after another. And you get this guy who is a retired 3-star admiral showing up and saying, "You're important to me. I want to hear your story, and what can I do to help you get your life back on track?" Can you imagine? It doesn't take much imagination to think these guys are going, wow, why me? Why this guy? Why? And that's powerful. That's what I saw on that day, and I appreciate you inviting me down there to do that. But that's special. It is.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, Kevin. But to be honest with you, I went into that reluctantly.
Okay.
I didn't want to go to jail, especially didn't want to deal with drug addicts, because you and I both spent our better part of our lives, adult lives, in an organization that was hell-bent on chasing down drug runners and putting handcuffs on them.
Right.
And so my vision of heroin addicts was pretty much the same thing as drug runners. I didn't want anything to do with them except put them behind bars. The local sheriff, he convinced me one day to go in there and see this program that he was running called HARP, and it's heroin addiction recovery program, and I reluctantly went. And he pushed me out in front of him. You've heard this story, but for your listening audience, he pushes me out in front of this pod of 44 hardcore-looking criminals and addicts. I mean, they were all tatted up, and they looked like, I mean, these are the kind of men that would scare you if you saw them on the street. And in a dark alley, you'd run like hell. I mean,
kind of like Brian.
Way worse. Way worse. These guys start with tattoos on the top of their head, and they go all the way down.
Okay. Sorry, Brian.
Kevin's just relating his experience when he first met me here at the brewery.
You look more like our chaplain.
Right? I appreciate that. I've seen pictures of him.
All right.
But in that first hour session, they somehow hooked my heart, and that's what compelled me to keep going back. And they are, and to get to your point before I forget it, because I'm at that stage in my life now where I'll think of something and then a minute later I've forgotten what it was. But after the third or fourth session where I went in there working with them, I had a young black male come up to me, and after the session, and he stuck his hand out, and he grabbed my hand, and you know the difference between a genuine handshake and a make-believe handshake.
Yeah.
This guy had a genuinely firm grip on my hand, and he shakes my hand, and he says, Admiral, he said, I just want to thank you for coming up here. You're the first successful person I have ever met.
Wow.
And, I mean, to be honest, I didn't think it was such a big deal that I'm going there. I'm retired. I ain't got nothing else to do except cut grass and play with the grandkids. But that statement told me a lot about the segment of society that is in our jails and prisons, because what I later learned out is that this young man had grown up in the projects he raised by a single mother, and the successful people in his circle were the pimps and the pushers who had the most bling and drove the fanciest cars. And what he was telling me is, I've never had anybody that was successful on the other side of the fence pay any attention at all to me. And I learned a lot from that young man.
You bet. That's exactly what we're talking about. That's what I observed, and that's the whole point of this podcast. Actually, is to reach out and touch folks that are getting perspectives from people who have been there, done that. And so, yeah, thank you for doing that. And I know the work continues, and it's just going to keep getting better.
Yeah, I'm glad we got a chance to start talking about that program, because it's absolutely phenomenal. Having spent a number of years in law enforcement and seeing what they're doing down there in Chesterfield is absolutely impressive. Got a chance to meet you when you did the Lob Talk, the Learning Over Beers here, and shared your story about some different experiences, and then this experience as well, working with these folks, and had some of the folks that have graduated from the program and are now doing very well came up here and shared their story as well. And man, that just that tugs at the heartstrings, and it's cool to think about it, because I'm like you, for years I thought exactly where those people belong is behind bars. They're drug addicts, drug dealers, whatever. Put them in jail. Thank God for people like Sheriff Leonard, I believe is his name, right?
Carl Leonard.
For folks seeing the opportunity to do it different, and having the courage and the willingness to do it different, probably despite lots of criticism from others. So good on him, and thank you for what you're doing there. That's cool stuff.
Well, thank you, but I keep going back to I get more benefit out of them than they get out of me. And one of the primary thing I've gotten out of them, the number one thing they taught me that I'd like to share with the listening audience is they taught me not to look down my long nose of moral superiority at other people just because of the way they look, just because they're tatted up, or because they got a record behind them. Because I learned firsthand through hundreds of stories, people that I've dealt with, that a lot of them didn't have any choice at all. They were born to an addict, or their mothers, and this is horrible to think of, but some of them were born to addicted mothers who then, when their daughters got of age, prostituted their own daughters out to support their habit,
right.
and in order to get them to cooperate, would get them addicted to. How do you judge somebody like that?
Yeah.
You don't. You try to help them. And that's what the sheriff has done down here, is created a program that is bent towards that. And the recidivism rate in that particular jail is the best in the nation.
That's
and
awesome.
It's so good that right now, last week, the Discovery Channel started filming a 3 to 4 part series on that program. I mean, they're literally living in the jail every day, following these people around. That's the kind of impact one man can have.
Yeah.
And that man was a sheriff who cared.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was another thing that's flashing through my mind while I was listening to Dean talk is Lisa Thomas. I don't know if you've ever heard of a lady by the name of Lisa Thomas, but we need to connect these guys. Lisa is somebody that was a guest on our podcast, and she's very passionate about helping people that are currently incarcerated transition back into society and help to continue to lower that recidivism rate and so on. So, and she's got an interesting story, right? So she's had her own experiences with living a life of drug addiction and prostitution and so on. And I've known her for a number of years, and she is doing great things in state prisons across the country, primarily here in Virginia. But yeah, helping a lot of folks in that way as well.
Yeah, she was a remarkable woman, absolutely. Listening to her talk, same kind of stuff that we're hearing from you, the kind of stuff where you go, wow, you just don't know. You don't know what people have been through, and in her case, she was one of those people that you were meeting with, or that you are meeting with. So, and just to see her today is quite remarkable. But anyway, I want to pivot for a minute away from the prison itself and the amazing work that you're doing there to you personally. You used the word successful. That one of the inmates said to you. In the jail, are they called inmates? I don't want to. Okay,
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So one of the inmates said to you, "You're the most successful person, or maybe the first, maybe the only successful person that's come in here and talked to us. By all external measures, you have lived an extraordinarily successful life in your professional endeavors, and so that doesn't happen by mistake in most cases. Every once in a while." It's handed to people who were born in a certain circumstance, but I would say that's not the case with you. In fact, I'm sure it's not the case with you. And so I just wanted to ask you, what do you think, if you were going to boil it down to some principles, knowing what we're up to here, that we're trying to pass along some wisdom, we're trying to pass along some principles about what it means to live a successful life. How would you, in your own words, say that you have taken on life, and particularly in this case, professional endeavors to be successful?
Well, there's a lot there, Kevin. But
yeah.
First off, let me just give you my Dean Lee's definition of success, because it's not being an admiral or a general or a senator or whatever. It's not. It's not having that title.
Thank you. I was just going to say, lean in, so we can hear you. There we go. There we go.
It's not the men and women with titles that impress me. It is the men and women who are able to get married, get a job, hold a job, raise a family in a godly manner, and teach their children right from wrong, and raise citizens that will raise other citizens. That's to me is success.
Okay.
And a lot of people want to talk to guys like me and say, well, what was your formula?
Yeah. It's probably kind of sort of what I just asked you. Yeah.
I think it's about 25% work, 25% just study and making some good decisions, and 50% luck. I mean, I was lucky enough in my career to be in the right place at the right time to handle some cases that, while Well, in the midst of making some in many cases, life and death decisions, knowing full well that I was walking a fine line between getting a medal and getting fired, I guessed right. And I don't want to take any more credit than that. I was a good guesser, and I put a lot of agony and prayers into some of those guesses, but it worked out for me. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me what is. I'm going to be buried in a veteran cemetery in Amelia, Virginia, and I've already made it clear to my family that they're going to put, because it's a veteran cemetery, everybody's got their rank up there, but I don't want anything other than underneath all of that, which is far more important to me than the title Admiral. I just want under there, servant saved by grace. Servant. To me, it's the service we perform, not how high the mountain is we've climbed. That is the real measure of a man or woman.
So I'm gonna push back a little bit on what you said, which you probably should.
Then I'll get another beer.
Right, there you go. And what I'm going to push back on, and what we're observing here is a truly humble man, that it was just 50% good guesses or no lucky guesses, I think is kind of how you characterize it. I don't believe that for a second. I accept that as your answer. I know you're not going to say anything different. I probably could have told everybody that's what you were going to say anyway. Right. But it has more to do with the willingness to put your nose to the grindstone, study your subject matter, know what the best practices are in those various scenarios based on your experience and what you've learned and studied, and surrounding yourself with good people and making good decisions. That's it's a little bit of a different formula, and I say that partially because I've seen it happen in your life, but I would say, but also the humility part of it is also something that people appreciate hearing, because there's a lot of people who aren't that way, especially in today's day and age. Boy, whoo, a lot of people blowing their own horn. Yeah,
it's interesting though, and I appreciate your answer, because I think that even in spite of the knowledge and experience and so on that we have in certain scenarios, there are going to be those circumstances where you're making this decision based on that knowledge and experience that you've had, and at the same time you're going, shit, I hope this works.
Right.
Right. You know what I mean? Because you just don't know.
Right.
So I think there, in some cases there is some luck involved in that.
It is.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was good. All right. You ready for the next one?
Sure. Bring it on.
Yeah. This is something that I know here we are in front of the camera being recorded, but and I would love to sit down over several beers and get deep into this with you. But it would simply be this. I believe that we live in a particularly difficult time right now in the world, not just in America, but in the entire world. And most recently, the Olympics are on right now. The 2020 Olympics now in 2021 are actually being carried out. And you watch the Olympics, and there's so much about watching the Olympics that demonstrates the difficulties that we are experiencing the entire world in so many ways. What is your perspective on all that? What do you have one? And if so, what do you think the world needs right now? What is it that's I know this is a tough one.
I'm sitting over here.
I know.
I'm very anxious to hear his answer, because I'm watching the grin on his face form as you're asking the question.
Right. Woo! Where are we going? Yeah, where are we going with this one? Drink that beer quick.
What is it the world needs? Yeah, I think John Lennon would probably say all we need is love, but
and he would be right.
And he would be right. But I don't know where you're going with the Olympic thing. I mean, there's a sports side of Olympics, and then there's a political side and the rebellion side of Olympics. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of rebellion on a soapbox where you're representing the United States of America.
Okay.
That was built in many cases by the blood of our forefathers. We're not a perfect nation, and nobody claims that we are. Our nation has had sins in its past. We're all aware of them. But so far, our experiment has been the best on the planet, at least in Dean Lee's view. And to me, it is disingenuous. If you want to be an Olympian, if you want to wear that gold medal, and I admire people that have the talent and the wherewithal and that self-discipline to do all of the training it takes to get to that platform.
You bet.
I admire them for that. But my admiration stops at that point where they will then stand up there and dishonor the flag of the country that sent them there. You might as well turn around, in my view, and shoot the finger to all of those men and women who served in all of the wars, fought in order to give us the freedom that allows you to do just that.
Yep.
And I think in all of us here, we're all veterans. We all took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, and I am well aware of that oath, and particularly the First Amendment, and which allows you to have that free speech. And I would be willing to go sign up again and fight and die for your freedom to do just what they're doing. That is their right, but that doesn't make it right.
Yep.
Yeah. No argument here. We've had those conversations many times, and I can honestly say I think I saw something the other day about the women's soccer team, who has been one of those teams that have been very outspoken with their objections and display of disrespect and so on when they who was it that beat them? Was it Sweden that beat them? I forget who it was.
It was.
I was actually a little happy about that, which it seems weird, right? As an American, that I would be happy that somebody beat one of our teams. And at the same time, I think sometimes, you need to have a little dish of humble pie. And maybe getting their ass kicked might get, I don't know. I don't know if something like that's enough to give them a wake-up call. But I wasn't upset by the fact that they lost. Maybe that'll be a wake-up call for them.
It's funny that you should say that, because I was, when I asked you the question, Dean, I was mostly referring to, I love the athletics part of the Olympics. It's just amazing, just like you said. It's the politics, and it's just everything about it that look, the one thing that I remember growing up that everybody could unite around, it would be a good athletic competition. And it didn't matter what color stripes you were wearing. You loved to get together with your neighbors,
right,
with your family, with your colleagues, and enjoy that. And to see that just being, but also the men's basketball team, which hasn't lost a Olympic game in I don't know a long time. They lost in the opening round. They lost to France in basketball. And I was thinking to myself, same thing, because a lot of professional sports have gone, they've gone political in so
off
many
the
respects.
freaking rails.
Yeah, and so I thought, I wonder if now that they've lost, because everybody in the world expects them to win, and I'm thinking if they're thinking to themselves, and I wonder if they're having this conversation. Wow, we lost.
Yeah,
we could lose this. That would be, I hope, an embarrassment to our country. And so maybe it just kind of gives them a little check that it is the United States of America that sent you there. They've paid for your trip. They've created an environment where you can go there and compete on behalf of the nation, and all is well. And you can talk about it all in great fun while you're winning. But when you lose, and you're faced with the prospect of losing, does it change your perspective on, wow, I am representing the country, and I'm about ready to embarrass us because we're supposed to win and we're not. So right. I wonder if that goes through their mind. Yeah, it's an interesting thought that I had.
It is a great question. What does go through their mind, and what kind of advice have they been given, and who are they really trying to please is the fundamental question. And each one. Look, we're baby boomers here. So when
well, some of you guys are. I'm a little younger than.
You're not. No, you're not. You're a baby boomer. I know you are.
No,
I know you're a baby
I think
boomer.
I'm the one that actually might be on the fringe.
Yeah. All right, well, let's just play with me for a minute. We're baby boomers. So,
all right. I'm a boomer. All right.
The generation that produced at least this baby boomer,
Okay.
born in 1954, was the greatest generation, a term dubbed by Tom Brokaw.
Tom Brokaw, yeah.
Right, yeah. And I think he had the right nomenclature for him, because my father was part of that. He landed at Normandy, marched all the way to Berlin with Patton's army, never rose above the rank of E6, but he saw more, done more in his 4 years in the service during World War II than I saw in 36 years.
Right.
I highly respect those men and women. Then they came home and they produced us, and they started an economy that it just started booming, and we were able to ride that wave all the way to modern day. And we got more and more and more. And then you look back in the 1960s when the first wave of baby boomers started protesting the Vietnam War. And there was a lot of reasons to protest that. And we had all the riots in the streets. And that greatest generation is looking at that just like we are right now.
Yeah.
And they're going, what in the hell have we produced?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Where are they going to lead our country?
Right.
But we outgrew it. For the most part, we outgrew it.
Right.
And so we're just dealing with another generation right now that we hope. But here's the thing. It keeps getting easier and better and better. And to get back to your point, Kevin, I fear for our nation right now.
Okay.
I'm concerned that, we just keep printing money. We keep making it easy not to work. And Sir John Glubb wrote a treatise back in the 1970s, I believe, that, it was basically the history of all the great world's empires. And he made a statement in there that the average empire lasts 250 years. I think we just passed our 247th birthday.
Right.
We need to be mindful of that. We need to be thinking about that.
Right.
And I hope that the children or the adolescents now that are raising hell and protesting in the streets will mature and grow up and realize that if we don't hold on to this democracy, we're apt to lose it and our standing in the world. And you and I are going to be in our grave, but I fear for my grandchildren.
Amen to that.
You actually remind me as you talk about that. Brian and I have covered this. It's been a long time ago on one of the podcasts. After the Constitutional Convention broke up, somebody, a member of the press, came up to Benjamin Franklin and said to him, "What kind of government did you create?" And his response was, "A republic, if you can keep it."
Right.
And it was that if you can keep, he knew that if you guys don't take care of this baby that we have created, and that is going to have to be fought for, clawed for, scratched for, sacrificed for, you're going to lose it. And truthfully, the one word that resonates, I think, in all of this is the word freedom. When you start losing your freedom, then that is the flashing neon sign that says, on your car dash, pull over, don't drive any further because you're going to ruin this car if you don't take care of this right now. I think we're there because the freedoms and the people who are taking them away, I believe, don't really understand what they're doing, or if they do, they're doing it for
no, it's
for the wrong reasons.
It's the mindset, and we've talked about this on another podcast as well, Kevin. It's their mindset. It's the American mindset that so many of these folks have, that they take for granted all the freedoms that they do have, and they operate in such a way that they don't even realize what they're putting in the swing and what they could potentially lose because they just take it for granted. It's a guaranteed thing to them, and it's not. It's not guaranteed. It was earned by the blood and the tears and hard work of people that came before them.
Sweat.
Right.
Sweat.
Yep.
And I think that, in large part, that's what the current generation probably doesn't have too much experience in. Outside of those people who served in the military or who are first responders, or earn their living the old-fashioned way, like my father did. He was a carpenter.
Yeah.
But the notion of sweating and suffering a little bit is kind of foreign, I think, to this generation now that has become the generation that expects everything, that no suffering. Oh, no suffering. Everything's got to be easy. I am entitled. And it's only the folks who are willing to suffer a little and sweat and sacrifice a little that truly understand the value of freedom.
Yeah, and understand where it came from. That is a key part of it as well. I mean, if everybody who had any kind of significant impact on the founding of our country is canceled,
right.
Fast forward 20 years from now, you go to an elementary school and you start asking about the founders of this country. Who was this person? Who was that person? They'll all say, I don't know.
Right.
Never heard of them. And that is not good. When you start doing that, that is not good. We have to, and I don't know who said it. I'm going to totally bastardize it, but it was, those who don't know history are what? They are cursed to repeat it. They are cursed. If you don't know why the fence was put there in the first place,
right,
and you tear the fence down, you are cursed to suffer the consequences.
We should title a podcast after that.
Yes, we should. Yes, we should. Yes.
I'll stop shy of saying something that I'm sure would garner some pushback from some in your listening audience, but we're putting too much focus on the wrong topics in school these days, and we need to put a little more emphasis on some the basics. Reading, writing, arithmetic, and history. Because
Amen.
You hit it head on. I mean, I wasn't a big history fan when I was in school, but I became a big history fan as I became an adult.
You bet.
And we need to keep pushing the necessity of that on the generation of leaders. Most people don't grow up thinking they're ever going to lead anything or anybody. But if you're going to be a leader, you better be a student of history in a big way. Over.
Yeah, and I think people need to frame that in a different way, right? So they leadership, they think about leading other people. They have to lead somebody every day. They've got to lead themselves, and they've got to have the personal discipline to do so, and so on. So that's, everybody is a leader because you need to lead yourself to get stuff done.
That's right. Hey, Kevin, I think you got a dead animal in here somewhere.
with all these flies.
Now we got little flies.
Right.
First it was the big flies. They're regenerating themselves.
I have no good explanation for this.
Gerhard, are there bodies under this building?
All right, I'm sorry.
We do have a plethora of other kind of live creatures moving around in here, but it's all good. We should celebrate them because I don't know why they're.
They got to eat too.
Right.
So let them be. So Dean, I have a question for you, sir. So I had the pleasure of listening to your lob talk about your experience with a police canine.
Right.
Which could have been a very scary experience for you, but I want to ask you that question. So, was that a scary experience for you, or throughout your career in the Coast Guard, what is the scariest thing that's happened to you?
Well, you asked two questions there. One's a statement. So I the lob talk. I told a story. This guy called it story about life lessons I learned from Joe the dog. Joe was a big old Czechoslovakian-bred canine that got spooked by me when I was riding a bicycle through a park one day on my way home from work, and he attacked me, and I ended up in the emergency room for 5 hours. It was all a mistake. I don't blame the dog, and I certainly don't blame the police officer. In fact, he and I became really good friends after that, and I forgave the whole thing. All right, there's no lawsuit. It didn't get in the paper, and
Amen.
To make a long story short, at the end of all of it, 2 years later, he had to retire that dog. And he hauled me up. He hunted me down in Washington, D.C., where I had been reassigned, and offered me that dog.
I remember
it
that.
goes back to my
He was so fond of you.
I couldn't take that dog because all I could remember was them canines chomping down on my right leg. But that was, you see a big old dog running at you, that's a little bit scary, but it's over with pretty quick.
Right.
The scariest day of my life was May 2nd, 2012. It might have been 2013, something. I'm getting that point where years kind of get kludged together. But I was invited to be the speaker at the National Day of Prayer up in Washington, D.C., representing the military services. And that is when they called me up and asked me if I was willing to do it, I mean, first off, that's not a job you apply for. Somebody had nominated me.
Yeah, how do you get selected for that? Yeah.
And so it was a colleague that had recommended me to them, and I guess they did a little research, and they called me up, and they one day just cold call out of nowhere and says, "Hey, Admiral," they introduced themselves. This is from the National Day of Prayer Foundation, run by James and Shirley Dobson of Family Talk, and they said, "Would you be willing?" Well, at that particular time, this was under another administration that was very left-leaning. There was a lot of pressure on the military services, all 5 of the services, to not bring that God stuff into the workplace. I mean, we had been told, leave that stuff at the threshold. Well, if you're I'm of the Christian tradition, and if you're a Christian, you understand that you have a duty to country, but you also have a duty to God. And the duty to God, if you're Christian, is the Great Commission. And it means you can't leave it at the threshold. I mean, that's dereliction of duty in the eyes of Jesus Christ.
Right.
And I knew that. I also love my job, so I found myself here right now. I'm making a decision right now. I am being asked to either accept this and perhaps put myself in jeopardy. And a sailor never sails a ship too close to the shoals. But I know if I go to that National Day of Prayer wearing a uniform and say what I need to say, ought to say, I could sail my ship right onto the shoals.
Right.
Are you willing? And that was a question I'm asking myself. They were asking me, are you willing to speak? And I got to ask myself, are you willing to go all in? Are you all in or not? I mean, because my gut told me, don't do it, danger, danger. But then my heart told me, if you truly are a man of God, if you truly do believe that Jesus Christ is who he said he was, then you need to put that first and go do it.
That is
it's almost like he's whispering in my ear, I teed this up, and I'm sensing this is a test. And so I very reluctantly but willfully said, yeah, I'll do it. And so then I got to thinking I can rationalize this. Okay, all right, I can do this and still keep my job. I'll just go up there, and I wrote this vanilla speech. They gave us a 10-minute time slot. There was 7 or 8 of us that spoke before a keynote. And so I wrote this thing that I knew wouldn't get me fired. And so we go up there, and this is how, now you've opened up a whole new box there, my friend, because now we're getting into the spirituality thing.
I'm liking where this is going.
Listen, buddy, I'm a sailor, and I will freely admit, and I got saved late in life. I was 41 years old when I finally got the good sense to understand that I needed God. And that's when I broke down, took a knee, and asked God to come into my life. And so what happened was, there's 7 or 8 speakers, and in the batting order that day, when I went up there, first off, if you can believe this, I want you to understand something here. So this is how far our country has gone to the left since the greatest generation. In World War II, the Eisenhower and Roosevelt actually issued Bibles to all the soldiers, sailors, Marines that were going into the war. Issued Bibles to them. And on the day, on December 6, June 6, 1944, December 6th was my birthday. That's why I got that screwed up. So on June 6, 1944, as my father and the thousands like him were going ashore at Normandy, Roosevelt actually got on national radio and he led our nation in a prayer.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
This is the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, leading the nation in prayer for those men and women who were going ashore. When's the last time you heard a president lead the nation in prayer? So we've gone down that road so far that now in 2013 we're at a point where now you got organizations that exist outside of the lifelines of the military services who are lobbing grenades inside the compounds of the military towards Christians and Jews and anybody else who dared bring God into the conversation and offend somebody in the workplace. All right, so that's, I give you that preface because that's the era now that I'm dealing with. And so I've been asked to go talk about God, representing the services. And if I'm going to do it, so now I'm put in that precarious position where that none of us wants to be in. I'm caught between 2 3-letter words that are both very near and dear to me. God and job. I want both. But I know if I go up here and deliver that speech, if I do it just right, I can keep my job and I can honor God too, at least in my mind. So we get up there and I'm in the batting order. I'm number 6 out of 7 warm-up speakers before the keynote. This is a 3-hour event. So it's getting close to my time to speak. And the guy that's preceding me is almost finished up and I'm ready. I got my little vanilla speech in a folder right there in front of me. I'm ready. I'm chomping at the bit, go up there and get it. And by the way, I'm wearing my dress white uniform. And I had to get permission from the lawyers to wear a uniform, and I had to take leave. Their first answer was, no, you can't wear your uniform to that thing. I said, how can I represent the military services if I'm not in a uniform? So I had a lawyer that got me to yes. But then he said, but you got to take leave. All right, no problem. I don't have any problem taking leave.
You can't be drawing pay while you're doing that.
I'm on leave. Right. I'm in my uniform, and I'm representing all 5 of the military services, and I got a vanilla speech in my lap I'm ready to give. And so here's how God works. They had told us, you got 10 minutes. And to make sure we were within our 10 minutes, they had given each one of us this little card that had our 10-minute slot. And my 10-minute slot was 11:24 to 11:34 a.m. Notice the specificity of that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say 11:20 to 11. It says 34. I mean, they got this thing scripted down to a minute. And each one of us said, and they told us, they said, don't you go over. You can go under, but don't you dare go over. Well, the guy that's preceding me is finishing up, and I'm looking at my watch, and it is now 11:31. He's already eaten into my time slot several minutes. How am I going to give this 10-minute speech? I don't know how to cut that thing down because I had written it out. And all of a sudden, here comes the moderator. He comes down and he's looking at the clock. He knew they had to get the keynote on it exactly at minute 45 because it was all being televised and it was going to kick everything off. Everything started with the keynote. It was a pastor by the name of Greg Laurie out in California. I love the guy. So he comes down to me and he leans over to me on the second row. I'm sitting there with my wife in my dress whites, and he goes, Admiral, he says, I'm sorry, but we're running behind. We're going to have to flip-flop you and the keynote speaker. I looked at him. What I heard, he said flip-flop you and the keynote speaker, meaning I go after him. I look at him because I know nobody speaks after the keynote. Nobody.
Right.
You just don't do that thing. And so I just looked at him and said, okay, good. And I go, thank you, Lord. I've been taken off the hook. I was obedient. I was going to do it, but he took me off the hook. Now there's no danger. I'm not going to get anywhere close to the show water. Pastor Laurie gets up and he gives a great 20-minute sermon. Now we've been in there 3 hours. He's finished. Everybody's clapping, ready to go home. And all of a sudden, the moderator, Dr. James Dotson, starts to introduce me. I know this is getting long-winded, but this is important. Good. This is the important part right here. He starts to introduce me. I'm speaking after the keynote. Everybody's ready to go home. I know doggone well that if I get up there and say anything more than a minute, they're going to hate me. I would hate me. But he's introducing me. And so I get this panic. I mean, I'm accustomed to speaking publicly. But I panic. I feel like I'm just ready. I am hyperventilating, and he's introducing me, and I got to go up there and speak. And I know if I read that 10 minutes, I'm done deal. And so as I start to panic, I feel this. It was almost as if somebody had poured this warm pitcher of water over my head at that moment. And it was like washing away all that fear. And it was the most spiritual moment of my entire life. It was as if God was whispering to me, get on up there, speak from the heart. I got your back. Leave that speech there. I'm just going to tell you this, and a lot of people think I'm nuts when I say this, but I do believe God speaks to us, and I believe that he orchestrates things for his purpose. And I believe that he wanted me to go up there that day because I'm just stupid enough to say what needed to be said, but too afraid to do it. And so he rearranged the batting order, and he made me the keynote. And I had to go up there, and I turned, and I faced, and I left my notebook on the stand. And when I turned and faced that sea of cameras and all of that audience up there on Capitol Hill, and they were senators, and they were judges, and there was a lot of high-up muckety-mucks in that audience. I turned and faced them. I had no idea what I was about to say, and I just kind of said, Lord, give me something. My intention was to speak 2 to 3 minutes. 14 minutes, 25 seconds later, I walked off that stage, absolutely certain I was going to be fired the next day. And it was recorded, and it went kind of viral on Facebook and on social media. Before the sunset, Fox News wanted to interview me. My public affairs folks back at Coast Guard headquarters, now I'm a 2-star now at this point, they're begging me, don't do any more interviews. I said, don't worry, I'm not. I couldn't even tell you what I said at that point. But I knew I was standing on whatever it was I did say.
Right.
And the next morning, Politico and their morning news feeds, it had a picture of me standing up there in my dress whites holding a little blue Bible, my Coast Guardsman Bible up in front. And the caption said words to the effect of, this admiral tells Obama what he can do with his Bible ban. And I knew that my career was over. And the truth of the matter is, President Obama was not even in my calculus that day. It wasn't Obama that I was pushing back against. It was a guy named Mikey Weinstein, who is head of a nonprofit called the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. He's a retired JAG officer from the Air Force who goes after men and women of faith for expressing their faith inside the workforce. And he had recently gotten access to the Pentagon trying to make it a violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice to do what we're supposed to do if we're Christians. And I was pushing back on that. So, anyway, but you can't get that back in the box. You know? It made it look like
and it shouldn't be back in the box.
Rogue Admiral goes against the Commander-in-Chief. And I can tell you unequivocally, that wasn't what I was doing. He wasn't the guy I was talking to. I was talking to Mikey Weinstein.
Right. Even though the shoe might fit, it's still not the guy you were talking to.
So, anyway, long story longer. I take the next day off. I just take leave. I don't want to have to go get fired on a Friday. I figure this can wait till Monday. So I called the boss up and say, "Can I take off tomorrow?" He said, "Yeah, take off." Monday, I got to go in, and all the admirals in Coast Guard headquarters every morning at 8 o'clock, they go into the command center and they get a brief from the folks who run the command central there, and about everything that's happened the last 24 hours, everything they think is going to happen the next 24 hours, and commandant's in there, all in there, and so I know I'm going to be in there. And by this time, everybody knew this Dean had made a speech, and this thing's gone sideways. So I'm in the room there, and the brief is over, and generally the commandant, when we finish those briefings, he'll turn and he'll go to his office and start his day, and all the rest of the admirals go to their offices, and we all go do our thing, doing all that urgent but unimportant stuff that admirals do. Well, he turns around and he looks like he's walking out the command center, and then so all my buddies, hey, admirals, when you get them together in a room, they revert just like they were when they were Lieutenant JGs, You just start, "Hey, what up with that speech, Dean?" Right. And I'm thinking, and all of a sudden I see the commandant turn around, he starts walking towards me. They see him coming, and they part like the Red Sea.
Right. They're done with that conversation. They don't want to have it anymore.
So I'm thinking, this is good. I get this over real quick. Real quick, I'm a guy that I want the Band-Aid ripped off now. I don't want that slow thing. Go ahead, fire me now. I'm ready. My wife and I have been thinking about retiring for a while. I can go fishing in North Carolina. He walks over, and this is one of the greatest demonstrations of leadership I've ever seen. He sticks his hand out. He walks over, sticks his hand, he shakes my hand, and he looks at me. And I don't know how to describe this other than this. He shakes my hand, he looks at me, he says, "How you doing, Dean?" And I go, "I'm doing fine, Admiral. How are you?" He goes, "I'm doing fine. You have a good day." And he turns around and walks out. Nothing was ever said about it again.
Nice.
He took some heat, I'm quite certain, from the Pentagon and from other people. But he was a Christian himself. And he went to bat for me.
Yeah.
That's what leadership is about.
Absolutely. Putting that shield up and protecting those that you're, under your charge from folks that would attack them. That's outstanding.
The answer to your question is the scariest day of my life was when I turned and faced that sea of cameras with a live feed going to the nation with no idea what I was about to say. But the greatest lesson I learned is if you try to do the Lord's will, He'll cover down for you. Because against all odds, a year later I got nominated for a 3rd star, which I was quite certain I'd never get confirmed for, given the way the Senate operates. But got confirmed anyway. Praise God. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's outstanding.
That's a good story.
Yeah. So, unbeknownst to you and me, when I asked that question, before you got here today, Kevin showed me the video of you doing that very speech, giving that very speech. And I had actually seen it before because based on previous conversations that Kevin and I had, I looked it up and I'd watched it. So, yeah, it was absolutely outstanding. And I think it's interesting because to hear you say that you don't remember what you said, because I think that happens in scenarios like that when God's leading the way, right? The words are coming from Him to you and being channeled right through you, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And it was, absolutely, I would argue brave and courageous to do, and others might argue reckless. Either way, you stood for who you are and what you believe in, and I think there's a shortage of that going on in our country today, and we need more people that are willing to put it on the line to call out what's right and stand up and fight for it. So hats off to you for that.
Well, thank you. But hey, look, courage, my favorite definition of courage came from John Wayne. I think it's just a line some smart guy wrote for him in a movie, but he says, his definition of courage was being scared to death but saddling up anyway.
Right, doing it anyways, right? Yeah, courage is not the absence of fear. Right. It's the willingness to drive forward in the presence of it.
Right, but see, that way I can't claim courage because I went there with a vanilla speech. He had to re-rack everything to get me to give the real speech he wanted me to give. And then he gave me the words.
He's up there with the chess pieces of life going, right. Yeah, no, that's not going to work out.
So I was just a scared guy being obedient. That's all I was.